Awesome. I'm alive.
Hi.
Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome, Katie. It's been a bit of time since I've done the recruitment show live. I was just telling Katie, actually, it gets all like, you end up doing so many, you actually get burnt out doing them. So, so it's nice to have a little break. I've been doing my espressos, which have been really fun. But so many people have been asking me about burnout. They've been saying they're getting burnt out a lot. And obviously we've had the pandemic, which we'll talk about. So Katie, who specializes in helping people through these kind of things, has kindly agreed to come and speak to me on a live show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Thanks for joining. I guess it's like useful to start with how's the last 6 months been? I mean, you must have been like crazy busy.
Yeah, so I think I did what a lot of people did. So the pandemic hit, the lockdown hit, and I was like, all right, like let's see how many people I can help. Let's do a couple of different things. And then because I work with leaders and companies about how to manage stress, talking about mental health, mental quality, just general basic well-being. I talk a lot about the impact that stress and anxiety has on the body and the mind. So I was busy. I was a bit busy, to be honest.
So did you a lot of your stuff went clearly online, right?
Yeah.
You were doing live events, like you were doing live training and before?
Yeah. So I was doing workshops and speaking gigs, and all of them I just shifted over to webinars and things like that. All my coaching is online, so it wasn't too bad, but it's been definitely an interesting 6, 7, 8. I don't know how many months it is now, but it's been an interesting year.
Definitely. When have people started to talk about burnout to you? Has it been something that's like developed over the pandemic, or?
So, I mean, to be fair, I was always working in burnout even before the pandemic. However, I had an interesting wave of it. So initially, the first 4 weeks of lockdown, everyone was like, oh, when is this going to end? Is it only 4 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? And around the 4-week mark was when everyone was like, okay, we need to prevent burnout because we're not quite sure on how long this is going to go. We're already mentally and emotionally fatigued. Let's see how we can prevent burnout. And then as it sort of went through, it just more and more people are like, okay, cool. Like my leaders are burning out. I'm burning out. What can I do for my team? So it was definitely a different wave. And now a lot of it is, okay, how do we overcome the burnout that we've had from the last few months? And how do we prepare for the next foreseeable future? Because it's so uncertain, right? So
it was a strange one because when the pandemic started, it was like, you've got to hustle, right? Everyone's like, I've got to grind, right? If you're running your own business, you want to get more clients, you want to make the sales. If you're an employee, you're worried that you might lose your job. So you've got to work harder. You don't want to be the one that gets made redundant. And then everyone was like, pivot, do something,
Pivot, adapt, all the glorious words.
So it felt like, relentless, like I don't know anyone that like probably 4 or 5 months. I mean, no one took a holiday and everyone was just on it, and it takes its toll.
Well, the other thing is as well that we've got to think about is majority of the time when we're looking at holidays, because holidays is a big piece of it, right? Most of us work really, really hard throughout the year to have a holiday, and we know when that holiday is going to be. It's going to hit, and then we go on that holiday, and we're able to decompress and relax and all that kind of stuff. This year was completely different. We didn't know if we could take holidays. We didn't know if we're going to have to quarantine when we got back, when we were allowed on holidays. A lot of people have gone, I don't want to go on holidays. I don't want to waste my time off. So it's been really uncomfortable. And as human beings, we don't like not knowing when things won't end. Like we like to know a start point and an end point. And when we don't, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety. So, if you're not looking forward to something, it's really tough to keep on grinding at the end of the day.
Yeah, because a lot of people they work for their holidays almost.
Yeah.
They have this 3-month target. I'm going to do loads of work, and then I can just chill out a holiday. And then you're right. You have these targets in your mind of when you can go and chill out, and suddenly that gets taken away, and it's an odd thing. It's like
It's been tough for a lot of people, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons people have been burning out, and also just not knowing when they can take that break, or like having a staycation isn't enough for people. So it was definitely a lot of people are probably feeling it out there right now.
Well, they were like, I don't want to go on holiday in England. I mean, if you're in England, but a lot of people, if you're in England, you want to go away somewhere.
Yep.
You don't just want to go to the countryside. Although it did get inundated, I think. But it feels like you want to hop on a plane, and once you hop on that plane, suddenly it's like, right, I'm out. I'm like disconnecting, I'm recharging, and no one had that.
A lot of people didn't. Yeah, like, I mean, we had summer, and then there was a period of time where we were very unlocked. Like, it was really, lockdown did end, and you were able to travel, but there was still the potential of, oh, well, I might have to quarantine when I get home. Will I have to quarantine when I get there? And there's just been so much information coming out about it all that it was just like, should I, shouldn't I? What should I do? Can I? And then there's obviously people who are on furlough, and the fear of redundancies as well is a big one. So
yeah,
it's
true.
been tough.
How do you like, maybe just rolling back, how do you even know if you're getting burnt out?
Oh gosh. So I always talk about the 6 stages of burnout, and I think when you start really noticing burnout. So if we talk about, if I use an example of the 6 stages of burnout throughout the pandemic, I'll give them to you. I'll make it succinct. But initially, so lockdown hit. What was the first thing we all wanted to do? Okay, we need to hustle, we need to grind, we need to make sure that our businesses survive, we need to make sure we're getting clients in, we need to make sure that I'm doing the best job I can at work. So there's an excitement, there's a nervousness, there's an energy behind it, right? And working those 12, 15, 16, 18-hour days, or whatever you were doing, didn't seem that difficult. But after around the first 3 to 4 weeks, that kind of wears off, or even 2 weeks for some people. It's like, oh, hang on a second, this isn't slowing down, the lockdown isn't ending. And then what you do is you try and keep pushing through. So the second phase is like, I've got to work harder, but your adrenaline has completely dropped. You've been using adrenaline as your fuel source, which isn't like a limitless source, right? You're going to use it up. There's no way your body can keep producing that. And so then you try to force yourself to keep going. So, you're drinking caffeine, you really are burning the candle at both ends. And then what typically happens is you start getting a bit tired, you start getting a bit fatigued. You might start feeling a bit unwell. You might start getting aches and pains. You might be having stomach issues, getting a bit sick, which is not really a good thing at all. Yeah. And then what happens is you start getting a little bit anxious. You might get a little bit frustrated. Your personality might be changing. Your behaviors might be changing. And then the cynicism hits. Like you're a little bit more, you've got a bit of apathy towards work. You're a bit uncaring. And then typically when you've burnt out, you're waking up and you're like, I can't even get out of bed. So that's typically the flow of it. But
right.
A lot of people got to that point where they were, the excitement part's the easy part, right? Like, you're just using adrenaline. That's not a difficult part.
Yeah.
But then trying to push through that is hard.
And I guess also because most people, and obviously we're talking about office-based workers, they were all at home. You're right. Like, probably a lot of people probably did less exercise.
Yep.
Probably not eating so well, but some people I spoke to were eating well. And then I always found, and I was walking around my neighborhood, and you have the recycling bins, those green bins. They were packed with wine bottles.
Yeah.
Like, just walking around and I was just like, wow, so many more than normal.
Yeah.
And I guess that stuff just doesn't help either.
Absolutely not. So I always talk to people about what's the first thing that drops off when you're feeling a little bit stressed, when you're feeling a little bit pressured. It's usually diet, exercise, and rest, right? They're the 3 things that most people stop doing when they're feeling a little bit stressed out, or if they're needing to hustle or whatever it is. You kind of go, well, right now I need to do X, and I've got to eat what I can eat, and I'll exercise. It's future me's problem. It's not today's me problem. Yeah. And then obviously the rest part doesn't come into it at the end of the day. And then, a lot of the times, what are we doing at the end of the day? We're feeling stressed out. We're feeling a little bit, uptight. So what do? We go to the wine, we drink some alcohol, we're trying to just, use that as a way to calm down. And it's just causing so much havoc throughout the body. If we look at stress in general, it has such a profound impact on the body with digestion, inflammation, immunity, all of that kind of stuff. Then you add in alcohol, which is also going to damage your gut health. It's going to damage it's going to cause inflammation. It's definitely it was definitely a vortex of unhealthiness during lockdown.
It's tough. Also, no, yeah, and it comes. I think it probably just mounts up, doesn't it? It all comes at once. We've had actually one relevant question to this conversation. Actually, let's show the conversation. So, one LinkedIn user who will remain anonymous. I've realised I'm burnt out when it's too late. How do I get to understand the first signs?
Yeah, so this is a really, really big one. So complete transparency, I've burnt out twice. So I know this feeling really well. And I think what I learned and what people really need to understand is looking at your body as a warning sign. So for instance, for me, mentally, I actually felt pretty good until I burnt out. I didn't really have that cynicism. I didn't really have a lot of apathy. I didn't really have the mental health stuff. I had more of the physical warning signs before I really burnt out. So actually taking note throughout your day, like understanding, how did I sleep last night? Did I get to sleep okay? Did I wake up throughout the night? How am I feeling when I wake up? Am I feeling energized? Am I feeling excited? Am I feeling nervous? Am I feeling absolutely exhausted? How am I waking up? How's my body feeling? What's my digestion doing? Am I feeling bloated after I'm eating? Am I feeling a little bit more nauseous? Has my appetite changed? Another thing to really note is understanding your behaviors. So understanding, are you making more excuses not to do things that you would normally do, like talk to friends, jump on Zooms and things like that. Those types of things are really quite big warning signs. So
but it's hard. It's quite hard though, isn't it? Because I think for myself, I wouldn't want to admit that I'm burnt out. Like I just wouldn't. I don't know. I'd be like, I'm cool, or you just. I don't know. I don't think I'd probably like this question. It would be too late. I think for me.
I think it's once you've burnt out, you don't want to do it again. So it took me the first time I burnt out 8 months to really get back to normal. So for me, it was like I really got to not do that again. But I didn't learn my lesson enough, so I did it again. But realistically, for me, I did the same thing. I denied how I was feeling. I denied that I was burning the candle at both ends and I really didn't take note. And the one day that I did take note, I woke up, I had a cold sore that was like from the bottom of my lip down my jaw, like down to my chin, up my jawline and around my ear. And I was like, like I feel like my body is like, I might not think I'm stressed, but my face is going to tell me otherwise. So that was my thing.
How did you then take control? So you've realized you've burnt out. You maybe haven't heeded the warning signs. So you've burnt out now. How do you get back on like an even kilter?
Of it, yeah. So the way that I look at burnout, I always look at 3 pillars. So I look at your physical health pillar. So we've got to, realistically, what we've got to do once you've burnt out, which honestly you've got to try and prevent, so you can use this as a way to prevent it as well, is understanding the 3 key components of physical health, which is diet, exercise, and rest. And you've got to make sure you've got to have equal parts of that. And creating a physical resilience is really important as well, which is so easy to let go in stressful times, right? In stressful times, that's the first pillar that's just like, all right, I'm not going to do any of that. And
so physical resilience, you mean like do some exercise, walk, go lift some weights at the gym, like that kind of stuff?
So resilience it's definitely a multiple component and multiple facet way to look at it. But I always look at it as, what have you done physically to challenge yourself? What have you done to make sure that you've rested and recuperating? And what have you made sure that you're fueling your body with the right types of foods? Now, I'm not somebody that says, I'm a nutritionist. That's my background. So I don't tell people you can't eat bad things. I don't say that, but I always say, what are you doing to make sure that you're hitting your baseline level, to make sure that you are replenishing the energy that you've expended and all that kind of stuff, and understanding what's actually going on. When we're really stressed out, we've probably got a lot more inflammation. So eating foods that aren't going to cause additional inflammation. So, trying to limit your sugars, trying to limit your alcohol. I know people hate that one, but that is a really big one. Making sure you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, good quality meats if you eat meat, those types of things. And then obviously when we're looking at the exercise piece, we can look at the resilience piece, and exercise and challenging yourself and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't have to be really difficult. So for instance, you could be like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on challenging myself for 10 minutes today to do a bit of a HIIT exercise before I start my day at work, or how I'm going to end my day. Go for that walk, build that up as well. There's a lot of research coming out about that actually doing a bit of HIIT can actually build that resilience.
And HIIT, for those that don't do it, is high intensity
training.
Sorry, get that heart rate up. Get that heart rate up.
And then obviously the idea of rest. And I think rest is an interesting one because there's two ways to look at it. Are you active? Are you actually resting? Are you just sitting idle? I think a lot of us know what it's like sitting idle, where you're sitting there, you're not really resting, you're sitting there, you're not working, you've got your computer down, but maybe you're scrolling through your phone and you're not really paying attention, but you're just laying idle. That's not really resting. So understanding what are you doing every single day, every single week to make sure you're getting adequate rest as well. So I think that's the first thing, and making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you are taking breaks throughout the day as well. That's a big part. And then you've also got to look at the mindset piece. How do you respond to stress? Like, what is your reaction to it? For me, when I felt stressed, it was, okay, I've got to work harder. I've got to go like a ball in a china shop kind of thing. I was, I've got to go for it. But other people don't react that way. But understanding, hang on a second, slow it down, make sure I've got all the right things in place. Yeah.
So it's really, so if you've burnt out, really kind of get back to that good way of living. And then also I guess, seeking help, if you're living on your own, if you are working at home and you haven't seen your colleagues, I suppose, the Samaritans are good. A friend of mine today, actually, he often calls them for some help and stuff. So seeking help. And then the other thing is, and I spoke about this the other day, is kind of confronting your boss almost and just saying like, hey, I'm really struggling. But then, so I did a little video on that, and a lot of people commented saying, look, my boss is a workaholic, he wouldn't understand. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to admit that I'm burning out because I could be next. So yeah, I think I don't know, if you go to someone saying, look, I really need some help, and you haven't got to go with the answers necessarily, do you? You can work that out with them, but I think you have to talk about it.
You have to talk about it. If it's really hard for leaders to know and bosses to know what's going on if you don't tell them. Something that I do say to both sides, so I talked about the employees and leaders. I say to leaders, I'm like, pay attention to your employees, see if there's behavioral changes, see what's going on. A really big thing, this is just for the employers, is to actually do a survey, something like that, to touch base. One of the things that I always tell people is that 1 in 3 people suffer from stress who report it. They're the ones that report it. There's a whole bunch of people that won't report it. I was somebody that wouldn't have reported my stress, but if I had to fill out a survey, I probably would have. So I always talk about your top performers. They're not going to directly go, yeah, I'm not coping. Most of them won't. But doing a survey, touching base with them as well. But also on the other side with the employees, understanding, your bosses don't know what they don't know. You have to let them know, I'm not coping. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but I'm finding it tough right now. I'm going to try X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. But that vulnerability piece is really important. And, I know that there's a fear of losing jobs or thinking. I think one of the biggest things when I burnt out, I was employed at the time, and I was always like, I don't want people to know I'm not coping. And I think that was such a big thing. And that was around 10 years ago. The conversation around mental health has changed so positively. And that's something that I think has been a huge positive in the last few months, the talk about mental health. So there are definitely more people listening, and there's leaders definitely trying their hardest to embrace that.
Yeah, definitely. And also leaders are probably going through the same thing too, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or, an entry-level employee. Everyone's going through this odd experience right now, which no one's gone through. So, they'll probably be very empathetic, and even they might be going through the same thing. You never know to look at someone what they're going through. So, and it's also, I know it's harder now because if you are working at home, you have to formally say, hey, can you pop on a Zoom or Google Meet or whatever platform you're using? So it's quite formal. And if you're, if you're a bit nervous doing that, you really have to pluck up the courage. But I think it's definitely worth it. Before we move on to more coping, I've got one question from Chris, which is quite interesting because I think a lot of people probably struggle with this. So this is one of your pillars about sleep. Any tips for people who wake up in the middle of the night, brain buzzing, worrying, not sleeping properly? Are there any little things that you can do to help you just relax and?
So I look at that in two ways. I always look at the physical side, which could be, I wonder if there's an imbalance of cortisol or something like that. So that's one way, but that's a different conversation. But what I always talk about when it comes to sleep, it's making sure whatever you're doing during the day is going to help you sleep at night. So making sure that you are doing, so the things that I always talk about, this actually really, really helps with reducing stress, is making sure that when you wake up, you're giving yourself 30 minutes to an hour where you're not checking your phone, you're spending a little bit of downtime with yourself. If you have the time, I know parents at home, this has been a bit of a nightmare for you. I understand that, but trying to have a little bit of time where you're not checking your phone and you're not focusing other people's wants, needs and desires and things like that. We've got information overload. That's a big thing. The other part is understanding an evening routine as well. Like what could you be doing to help reduce that stress? So turning your phone off, putting it in another room, definitely trying to do a little bit of breathing exercises. I know that sounds really like out there sometimes, but the meditation, the breathing. I always talk about breathing more as a physiological standpoint. So if we're looking at stress, one way to really combat that is breathing, is because you're actually going to force your body to calm down. So doing breathing exercises. But when you're waking up in the middle of the night, I think one of the biggest things I've learned is people that do struggle to get back to sleep are the ones that try to fight it. So sometimes it's waking up, and if you're buzzing, don't fight it. It is what it is. Just go, do you know what? I'm going to rest my body, and then start doing a bit of a meditation, focusing on different parts of the body, focusing on your breathing, focusing on your breath, and don't get angry at it. I remember I've been an insomniac. I totally understand when you wake up and you can't get back to sleep and you're really angry, like, oh, I just want to get back to sleep. But don't be angry, have that evening routine. And a lot of the times it's just that managing stress as well.
So does your bedtime routine help? Because for me, I've been trying to not look at my phone. I use night mode on my phone. So is it the yellow color? Because someone told me that the blue light makes you not sleep so well. So I do the night light. I try, and I definitely do not do this religiously, but I try not to look at my phone before I go to bed. And then I know a lot of people watch Netflix, everyone's those streaming channels are just shot up, right? Because you're at home and you can't go out right now. So I guess sitting in bed watching a movie, then going on Facebook or something, and then trying to sleep.
Well, your brain's just a buzz, right? Like your brain's kind of process all the information that you've put into it. So I have, I've got an iPhone. I know you can do this on Android as well, but I have downtime put in my phone where it just switches it all off. And then if I really want to, I have to go in, put a code in if I really want to do it, and look at it. But I really make sure for about the last hour and a half of my day, I do not check my phone. I limit the amount of Netflix I'm watching. I'll either read or chat with my fiance, or I'm usually doing something a bit random. But it is really important. I find that if I've, those times where, especially when you're checking your emails, you get an email, late at night and you read it, you're like, oh, I can't deal with it. But all you're doing is thinking about it. You've popped that information in your head. You're dealing with someone else's wants, needs and desires, right? Rather than focusing on your own.
It's true. I get anxious if that light starts flashing on your phone and there's an email where you've just glanced and you've seen it. I just have to look. It's super hard. The only time I really completely disconnect with work and I don't even think about it is when I'm at the gym. I'm lifting weights. I've gone for a run, because then I find it actually really meditative. I'm just concentrating on trying to lift up this weight. Or I'm like, oh, I'm working out next to someone and why is she lifting more than me? Or why is she going quicker? And you're just like, and then suddenly an hour's gone by, I'm like, wow, So for me, my exercise is like my meditation. It's great.
I've done that before. I've used that as well. Really switching off from work it's so tough, right? Like it is, especially when you run your own business, it can be really tough just to to switch off, or even if you're in a sales job or any job, really, it can be difficult to switch off. I think the biggest thing is just it's sticking to that routine, and it's creating good habits and breaking.
How do you do that? Like, how do you create good routines and habits?
So the first thing is to not overdo it, right? Like, choose one thing that you want to focus on and focus on that for the week, and really, get expert at that. What I notice with people, because I work with a lot of your type A professionals, the people that are like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be all in. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to wake up really early. I'm going to diet, and I'm going to make sure I do, turn off my phone and do all of that. It becomes so overwhelming that your brain's just like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, there's no way. So the first thing is, don't try to overcommit to stuff. Like, actually just change one thing at a time. So whether it's, at the night, I'm just going to turn my phone off half an hour earlier. I'm going to do a 5-minute meditation, and then I'm going to get into bed and give that a go, and try that, and, get expert level at that, and then add something else. It's the small little changes as well. The biggest thing is when you're trying to break a bad habit and create a good habit, usually with the bad habit, you have to replace it with a good habit. You can't just be like, I'm not going to do that. You're like, no, you've got to replace it, because your brain's looking for something. So that's a big thing as well, is making sure that if you're trying to break a bad habit, replace it with something rather than
it also, they say it takes like 2 weeks or something, or 4 weeks. I don't want to think to get into it.
The saying is it takes 3 weeks to break a bad habit and 4 weeks to create a good habit. I feel like that's a little bit simplistic. I think for some people it takes a bit longer. It depends, right? Like, if you've been doing the same bad habit for 30 years and then you try to break it, it's probably going to take you a bit longer to get out of that habit, right? You're trying to create a new habit, which is a subconscious behavior that you're not paying attention to, which just takes time. And then you have to break that bad habit as well. It's definitely a tough one.
The one thing I've really tried to one good habit, I think it's a good habit I've tried to create, is not read the news before like lunchtime, because there's never anything good in the news. It's just there's so much negativity. And I just felt much better about it, and then, all these WhatsApp groups as well, it's like throughout the pandemic, it's been like my friends, girlfriends, brothers, something or other said, and then you have all of these like semi-accurate facts shooting around. And I spoke to friends, and everyone was like so caught up in all of this stuff that I just found it affected so many people's mental health. And then they got anxious, then they weren't sleeping, and the exercise slipped, and they were ordering on like Deliveroo, the takeaways. And so I think it's now like 6-month thing just to take a breath and start to, if you haven't, just get back into those good routines that you mentioned.
Get into those good routines. I always say, do not look at the news first thing when you wake up. Do not watch the news when you're eating. Do not try to switch everything off, right? Like, what I always say, if you really want to break from everything, use how you're eating. So, if you're having breakfast, make sure the TV's off, your laptop's down, your phone's away, you're focusing on eating. That's taking that mental break as well. And you're just really focusing on eating. That's something that's really good to do. You can do it for lunchtime and dinner, whatever you're doing there as well. I've stopped watching the news. I've stopped watching it. I can promise you, I promise everyone out there that's like, how do you keep up with the news? Someone would always tell you what's going on in the world. If something crazy is happening, someone will tell you. So
that's true. That is true.
That's a big thing.
That is true. So just, I think what's also interesting is, so, hopefully people now, they can identify if they're burnt out, and there's some certain steps now that they can do. How do you make yourself a bit more resilient? Or how can you develop like techniques to help you cope with stress and anxiety better? If you're susceptible to that.
So the biggest thing is, when I'm looking at stress and how we respond, is understanding you personally and how you respond to stress, and really breaking it down. A lot of the times we have to look back at how we reacted to a situation. What were the things that you like, what were the things that you liked that you did? What are the things that you didn't like? And there's definitely a few ways to look at it. So we've got to understand how we filter information as well. So a lot of the times we'll see a bit of information, and we'll have thoughts, and then we'll have an emotion to it. So is that Are those thoughts positive? Are they negative? Is that emotion positive? Is that emotions aren't positive or negative, but emotions, what emotion was it? Did it make you feel good? Did it make you feel bad? Those types of things. And then understanding what was the behavior that I had after that, and how did that behavior then dictate the situation as well. So it's like, it comes full circle, right? So how did I actually manage that situation? So for some people, lockdown happened. They went into hustle. They tried to focus on everything that they could control. They were starting to go, what happens if I lose? They went down the what if rabbit hole. What if I lose my business? What if I can't pay my rent? What if I, I end up living on the streets or whatever it is, right? You're starting to what if yourself, but you're so far from that. It's being able to understand, how can I get myself back to the here and now, and what can I control in this in this moment. Right now, what can I control? And that's a really good resilient thing to do, is try to actually stop yourself going down that rabbit hole. This is the what if rabbit hole. I always talk about anxiety and stress. It knocks on your door at really inappropriate times to sell you inappropriate what ifs a lot of the times. And they always start off rational. It's like, well, what if I lose what if I lose my job or whatever it is? It's quite, right now that could be something that may or may not happen. It is. But then to be able to end up and going, well, how am I going? Like, what if I'm living on the streets? Like all that kind of stuff. You've gone so far and you're emotionally reacting to a situation that doesn't exist. So you're actually bringing it back and actually going, well, what are the facts today? What can I manage today? How can I do that and control the controllables today? And I always find writing a list of all the things you can control and all the things you can't control, and then understanding those thoughts and actually going, hang on a second, I'm having thoughts about things I can't control. Let's focus on the things that I can control and action one of those things. You're taking control. You're actually creating a positive behavior, and you're really creating you're taking away that stress. You're taking away that uncertainty, because you're creating a bit more impact for yourself.
Yeah. So it's, don't worry about the things you can't affect.
Yeah.
Right? Which is easy to say, right? And I said this to a friend of mine, and he was like, easier said than done. And I think, that's what I try and do. But I think if someone's in the midst of it, like they've been at home for 6 months, they're worried about their job. Are they really able to kind of almost flick the switch and control their anxiety by using these different like thinking methods? And
I think a lot of the time, so there's different ways to look at it, right? There's obviously situations that we can't control. That's absolutely rational, and that's going to cause fear, uncertainty, and worry and things like that. But a lot of the times we've got to look at what we can control, and what we can control. That's not saying I don't know how, I can't control what's happening with my job. You might not be able to do that. You might not know what's happening, whatever it is. But then you can actually go, but do you know what I can do for myself today? I can go for that walk. I can call that friend. I can, really just taking that note of all the things that you can do. And it doesn't have to be completely related. And I think that sometimes we live in a linear world where it's like, I can't control this with work, but what can I control with work? Maybe you can't. Maybe it's actually looking at, I can go for a walk today. I can do something else. You can look at, positive distractions and things like that. I think that that's a really big part of it.
Yeah, definitely think it's like the sun has decided to shine right in my face, but nothing I can do about it. And you just, I didn't put my makeup on, but there's nothing you can do. But I think also it's a lot of it as well is about who you surround yourself with. Yeah. And if you're speaking, as you said, if you're deciding to speak to someone, calling a friend that you can trust and will listen and talk and stuff, I think make sure that they're positive.
Yeah.
You don't want them to confirm your anxiety.
You want the person that can just have that chat with you, just like, that empathy piece, right? It's like, oh, here, it's, they're not trying to solve your problems. They're not trying to make you feel bad about it. They're just listening, right? That's really, really important. And not trying to add to that, and having that support network is really, really important. So I agree with that. Having, as my brother says, don't surround yourself with drainers, is what he was saying in his very Aussie accent.
It's true. No, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So on that, I know you do a lot of work developing leaders, like the physically, mentally, emotionally, and we talked about that at the beginning. So, I mean, I think I speak to a lot of leaders, and right now, I mean, the way you have to lead is completely changed now. Like leaders are just trying to grapple with, how do you manage a virtual team? The pace of change now is absolutely relentless, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think the last 6 months, people have been trying to survive,
Yeah.
and really reacting. And I think now it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to start acting, you know, what can you do to make your business?
It's shifting from that emotional reaction, right? So if we go back to the previous model, which is situation, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, a lot of the times the behaviors have been an emotional response. We're reacting to certain situations. So right now it's actually probably time to slow down what you're doing, to speed back up, to really understand, hang on a second, what could I be doing a little bit more proactively? I've emotionally reacted to it as everything as I can. I'm tired now. How can I actually get back on the bandwagon? And I think a lot of people are using this Q4 to obviously finish off the year strong, but also really understanding what are the changes we need to make for Q1 next year.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely something that's really important to understand, but definitely understanding, am I emotionally reacting, or what could I be doing a bit more proactively? A lot of leaders have been saying, all I've been doing for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months is been putting out spot fires. It's like, okay, cool. Like, we need a different tactic now. Let's take a step back. Let's look at what we could be doing differently. And I think the other thing, when I talk to leaders, I always say human first, business second, because if you are burnt out and you are not the best version of yourself in your business, it's going to be really hard to have a positive and, you know, a good culture at work if you're not doing it. And also, you're a human being. Like, you need to take care of you too.
Definitely. I think, you know, if you look at like professional athletes,
Mm-hmm.
they are, you know, they're eating well, they're sleeping, they're keeping the exercise up. And, you know, we're going to be working probably to make, I mean, we're going to be living to like 100, right? Maybe. So, and in, you know, there's many countries there's an overtime age, and you're going to be working a long time. And I think you need to think about treating yourself like an athlete. You know, like, you need to take rest.
Right. You've got to get that. You've got to put yourself to the rest.
It's a marathon.
I always say you can't sprint a marathon. That's one thing I always say to my leaders. I'm like, you can't sprint a marathon. I would know somebody that can, but like, a lot of people, you're gonna burn out at, you know, the first 10K.
Yeah. You've got to, like, it really is. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
But it is, you know. And I think you've got to take regular breaks. And even if you can't go away, and I know most leaders I speak to, they're like, my team, my employees, they haven't taken any holiday days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, so people aren't taking these holiday days. And I think you've got to do something, you know, whether it's a holiday, whether it's some exercise, whether it's trying to implement these sleeping methods to sleep better, but you've got to treat yourself like an athlete. You've got to
when I talk about rest, I say, what are you doing on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis? You know what I mean? We look at rest in those different ways. So what one thing are you going to do today to help you rest? And it's breaking it down. It's like, well, what are you going to do throughout the week? And I think a lot of leaders have gotten into this habit of working 7 days a week. They have to always be on. And that's just not realistic. That's just really not realistic for long-term growth and sustainability. No. And I think when we look at resilience, right? So we talk about resilience all the time in leadership. And I think it's understanding, you know, when we look at resilience, it's how do you manage adversity? Now, this year's been a very interesting year with resilience and adversity. It's just, it's been one massive curveball to the face. So it's definitely being able to understand, yes, being resilient, but understanding, is it sustainable? And having that sustainability is really important right now. So
it's true. One thing I do, so I've obviously, everyone has a diary, right? And you'd never, if you've got a meeting with your CEO, you're not missing that.
No.
You're going to turn up on time, probably a bit early, and you keep that appointment. And so for my exercise and for my rest, I put it in my diary like it's the most important meeting of the day, most important meeting of the week. And it, you know, and for me it works. I don't miss it. You know, if I'm doing a 6:30 a.m. class, I'm there. You know, it's like I'm meeting the most important client. So I think, you know, little tricks like that could help.
Absolutely. And I talk about the what, when, where when we're talking about exercise, rest, all that kind of stuff. It's like, what are you going to be doing? So what exercise, what activity, what resting? Activity could be resting as well. It's really up to you. What are you going to be doing? When will you do it? So what time will you be doing it? And then where will you be doing it? So understanding, you know, if you want to go to the gym, it's like, I know you do CrossFit. So it's like, I'm going to go to the CrossFit at 6:30 a.m. at the CrossFit gym. Like, so you've already visualized yourself doing it. So you're already, okay, you've created that mental pathway to action. And then then all you have to do is wake up and make sure that you go there. But because you've already got the mental pathway there, it's already set out and you've already created a bit of structure and a framework for yourself. Same thing with rest, right? It's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I'm going to take Saturday off. I'm going to spend time with the family. At 12 o'clock, we're going to go for a picnic. I know it's winter. Sorry, guys, but like I'm going, maybe we could have an indoor picnic or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, whatever it is.
Can't even do that right now. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but you can, depends where you live.
Depends where you live. This is true.
But, you know, even just having that, like, I'm going to do this inside my house with my kids or my family or my wife or friends, whatever it is. And even if it's a Zoom connection, you know, it's being able to understand what you're going to be doing, and it makes it really easy if you know how to structure that.
Very true, very true. And for those, I think just also worth mentioning, for those that are really suffering right now from anxiety and they don't know, they can't implement these things, they don't know what to do, I think the GP is probably a great place to start. I don't know if you can see them face to face, but you can do the Zooms.
You can do the teleconference, and then if it's bad, like I think from what I understand, you call the GP up, you have the phone call, and then you can go in. But you've also got Good Samaritans. You've got really good helplines out there that will talk to you if you need to as well, if you're really, really struggling. Yeah. Like you mentioned, Good Samaritans. There's some other really good ones out there as well, and I think that that's a really important resource right now.
Definitely. Awesome. Katie, thank you so much. That was great. So yeah, if anyone needs Katie's help, please check her LinkedIn profile out. And yeah, thank you so much for doing it.
Awesome.
And have a great rest of the day. Don't work too hard, chill out, relax, get some good sleep, and I'll see you soon.
All right. See you later.
See ya. Bye. Bye.